Power in Bridgeport, North Carolina looked like routine. Patrol cars idling at corners, their engines a low hum in the humid air. Officers nodding to neighbors on their porches, a performance of community policing that barely concealed the town's simmering tensions. For those who stood out, trouble was never far. When 3 police officers stopped 16-year-old Maya Jackson walking home from her summer job, they saw only a quiet, black girl. An easy target. Alone and defenseless. Their casual show of force quickly spiraled into violence, a brutal lesson meant to teach her fear and her place. But one phone call, made with bruised and trembling hands, would change everything. Because what these officers didn't know was that Maya's father is the Attorney General of the United States. And no badge, no small-town conspiracy could shield them from the storm that was coming. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The evening sun cast long, syrupy shadows across Bridgeport's cracked sidewalks as Maya Jackson walked home from her shift at the Daily Grind coffee shop. Her work apron, smelling faintly of espresso and cinnamon, was folded neatly in her backpack, replaced by her favorite purple hoodie. The North Carolina air felt heavy with the day's lingering heat, but something else, too. A tension that had become all too familiar in their small town since the protests 2 summers ago. Maya's phone buzzed with another text from her best friend, Chloe. She smiled, pulling it out to read. "Girl, you are going to rock that interview for the Moorhead Kane Scholarship next month. They'd be crazy not to want you." "Thanks, Chloe," Maya typed back. "Just need to finish that final essay first. Mom says dreams are good, but backup plans are better." She added a laughing emoji, thinking of her mother's practical, grounding wisdom. The streetlights were just starting to flicker on as she approached the intersection of Oak and Madison. The familiar storefronts, Joe's Hardware, Crown Cleaners, the old shuttered movie theater, stood as silent witnesses to decades of Bridgeport's history. Some still had faded Black Lives Matter signs in their windows, remnants of a fire that had been dampened but never truly extinguished. A police cruiser's engine rumbled behind her, moving slowly. Too slowly. Maya kept walking, her heart beginning to pound a nervous rhythm against her ribs, despite her best efforts to stay calm. The cruiser's tires crunched over loose gravel as it pulled alongside her. "Evening, miss," called out a voice, thick with a false, syrupy sweetness. "Mind stopping for a moment?" Maya turned to face Sergeant Miller, his pale, fleshy face illuminated by the eerie glow of the dashboard lights. Officer Croft sat in the passenger seat, already reaching for his door handle. "Is there a problem, officer?" Maya asked, keeping her voice steady and polite, just as her parents had relentlessly taught her. Her phone was still in her hand. With a practiced, subtle movement of her thumb, she pressed the emergency recording hotkey, another lesson learned from watching too many viral videos that started just like this. "Random check, that's all," Miller said, stepping out of the car. His hand rested casually on his belt, just a little too close to his baton. "Got some reports of suspicious activity in the area." Across the street, Reverend Eleanor Thompson from the First Baptist Church, who had been sweeping her storefront, paused and leaned on her broom. Mr. Washington, walking his beagle, slowed his pace to a crawl. In the windows above the shops, curtains twitched. Phones began to appear in hands, their small glass eyes silently recording what was unfolding. "I'm just walking home from work," Maya explained, gesturing to the logo on her backpack. "It's only 3 blocks from here." Officer Croft circled behind her, his movements predatory. "Lot of attitude coming from you, young lady. Why don't you show us some ID?" "I'm 16, sir. I have my school ID." Maya reached slowly for her backpack, making sure her movements were clear, visible, and non-threatening. "Awful nice backpack for a coffee shop worker," Miller commented, his tone sharpening. "Where'd you get that?" "It was a birthday gift from my parents." Maya's fingers trembled slightly as she pulled out her wallet. More people had gathered on the sidewalk now, their silent presence both a small comfort and a rising concern. A second patrol car pulled up, its red and blue lights cutting strobing patterns through the growing darkness. Officer Harris emerged, his massive, imposing frame blocking the warm glow of a nearby streetlight. "Everything okay here, Sergeant?" Harris asked, though his eyes never left Maya. "Just having a little chat with this one," Miller replied, a smirk playing on his lips. "Seems she thinks the rules don't apply in her neighborhood." "I'm following all the rules, sir," Maya said firmly, though her mouth had gone dry as cotton. "I have shown my ID, and I am simply trying to walk home." "That mouth of yours is going to get you in some real trouble," Croft warned, stepping closer. The circle of 3 officers tightened around her, cutting her off from the watching crowd. Someone in the growing group of onlookers called out, "Leave her alone! She's just a kid!" "Back up!" Miller barked at the crowd. "This is official police business!" Maya could feel the situation spiraling, the air crackling with a tension that was rapidly approaching a breaking point. Mrs. Chen from the laundromat had moved closer, her phone held high. Mr. Washington's beagle was growling low in its throat. "Am I being detained?" Maya asked, her voice clear and echoing the legal advice drilled into her head. "Because if not, I would like to exercise my right to continue walking home." Miller's face darkened with rage. "Oh, you'd like that, would you?" His hand moved from his belt to grip the handle of his baton. "Hands against the wall. Now." "What?" Maya stepped back, her calm finally breaking into confusion and fear. "I haven't done anything wrong." "She's resisting," Croft announced with a grim, chilling satisfaction. "Always resisting." The footage captured by the onlookers is a weapon of truth, but in the moment, it offers no protection. It's a paradox of our times, the ability to document injustice without the power to stop it. What would you have done in that crowd, phone in hand, watching a teenager be cornered? "Stop! Don't touch me!" Maya's voice cut through the chaos as Sergeant Miller's hands grabbed her shoulders, hard. The crowd's angry shouts echoed off the storefronts, bouncing between the old brick buildings of Madison Avenue. "Stop resisting!" Officer Croft barked, seizing her arm with bruising force. "I'm not resisting! You're hurting me!" Maya tried to maintain her balance as the officers pushed and pulled her from different directions. Her phone, pressed against her hip in her hoodie pocket, was still recording everything: audio, video, location data. Miller's face was twisted with an ugly rage. "On the ground, now!" He kicked the back of her knees, the cheap shot sending her crashing onto the concrete sidewalk. Pain shot through her palms as she instinctively tried to break her fall. "Please, I haven't done anything." Maya curled into a protective ball as the first blow from Miller's baton struck her across the back. The sound was a sickening thud that sent a collective gasp through the crowd. The onlookers surged forward, their horrified screams mixing with Maya's own cries of pain. "Stay back!" Officer Harris roared, pulling out his taser and aiming it threateningly at the crowd. "Anyone steps closer gets dropped!" Another strike landed across Maya's shoulders. She tried to protect her head with her arms as kicks began landing against her ribs. The rough, gritty concrete scraped her cheek as they pushed her face down into the pavement. "Stop! She's just a child!" Reverend Thompson's voice cracked with desperation. The elderly woman took a determined step forward, still clutching her broom like a righteous staff. "Last warning!" Croft pulled out his can of pepper spray, sweeping it in a threatening arc toward the crowd. People stumbled backward, choking and shielding their eyes, but their phones remained raised, still recording, still witnessing. Blood from Maya's nose began to drip onto the sidewalk. Each breath was a fresh stab of pain through her chest. "Help!" she screamed, tasting the metallic tang of blood in her mouth. "Somebody, please help me, Mr. Washington," his silver hair gleaming under the streetlights, broke from the crowd. "This is murder! You're going to kill that girl!" He shuffled forward, his walking cane raised in a futile gesture of defiance. Harris spun around and shoved the elderly man hard. Mr. Washington fell backward, his cane clattering across the concrete. His beagle lunged forward, barking furiously until someone in the crowd grabbed its leash. "Get back, old man, or you're next," Harris sneered, turning his attention back to where Miller and Croft were continuing their vicious assault on Maya. The beating seemed to stretch into an eternity of pain and terror. Through the chaos, Maya could hear people crying in the crowd, their prayers mixing with their curses. Her phone dug into her hip as she twisted away from another kick, her one coherent thought being that it was still recording, still uploading everything to her secure cloud storage. "Thought you were smart, didn't you?" Miller panted, his strikes punctuated by his heavy breathing. "Thought you could disrespect the law in my town?" "Please," Maya gasped. "I can't breathe." Another blow cut off her words. Croft grabbed her arms, wrenching them brutally behind her back. The cold metal of handcuffs bit into her wrists, cinched deliberately and painfully tight. "Not so mouthy now, are you?" Through her rapidly swelling eyes, Maya could see the lights of a dozen phones still recording, small constellations of witness in the darkness that had now completely fallen over Bridgeport. She silently prayed the footage would make it out, that it would show the world exactly what was happening on this street corner. "Get her up," Miller commanded, grabbing a fistful of Maya's hair and yanking. They hauled her to her feet, ignoring her cry of pain as her shoulders screamed in protest. Reverend Thompson had helped Mr. Washington to his feet. The old man's face was streaked with tears as he leaned heavily on his cane. "We saw everything," he shouted, his voice shaking with rage. "The whole world will see what you did!" "Clear a path," Harris ordered, shoving people aside as they dragged the battered and bruised Maya toward the patrol car. Her legs barely worked. Each step sent fresh waves of agony through her body. The door of the cruiser slammed shut, muffling the angry voices of the crowd. Through the window, Maya could see Reverend Thompson holding Mr. Washington as he wept. Other faces pressed close, phones still raised, still witnessing. The officers climbed in, laughing and congratulating each other on a job well done. The engine roared to life, and the cruiser peeled away from the curb, leaving the shaken, enraged community behind in a cloud of exhaust. Maya slumped against the hard plastic seat, tasting her own blood and tears. Her phone pressed against her leg, a small, cold comfort in the knowledge that it was still recording, still sending the undeniable evidence of everything that had happened into the digital cloud, a place they could never reach. The patrol car jerked to a stop in front of the Bridgeport police station, its headlights painting the peeling brick facade in a harsh, unforgiving light. Maya's whole body was a symphony of pain. Each breath was a sharp stab in her ribs. "Welcome to your new home, Princess," Sergeant Miller sneered, yanking open the back door. The fluorescent lights of the station lobby made her wince. Officer Croft grabbed her arm, pulling her roughly from the car. Her legs buckled, but they half dragged, half carried her up the concrete steps. The station was dingy and smelled of stale coffee and disinfectant. A bored-looking desk sergeant barely glanced up from his tabloid paper. They marched her down a hallway to a small, windowless room. "Processing," Officer Harris announced, shoving open a metal door. A single camera blinked from the corner of the ceiling, its red light a steady, accusatory eye. They pushed Maya into a hard plastic chair. "So here's how this goes," Miller said, leaning against the wall and casually wiping dried blood from his knuckles with a tissue. You violently attacked 3 police officers during a routine stop. We were forced to defend ourselves and subdue you. That's not what happened. Maya's voice came out hoarse but steady. There were dozens of witnesses. They were all recording. Croft let out a harsh laugh. Funny thing about those cell phone videos, they have a way of disappearing. He pulled out his own department-issued phone and tapped the screen. Just like our body cam footage from the incident seems to have gotten corrupted. Damn technical difficulties, you know how it is. I want my phone call, Maya said, forcing herself to meet Miller's cold eyes. Phone call? Harris mocked. This isn't some TV show, sweetheart. You're looking at a raft of serious charges. Assaulting an officer, resisting arrest, inciting a riot. I have the right to a phone call, Maya insisted, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her bruised ribs. It is the law. Miller pushed himself off the wall and got right in her face. His breath smelled of mint and day-old coffee. You want to talk about the law? How about I add a few more charges to your file? Maybe we found a bag of drugs in your little backpack. Maybe you tried to grab my gun. I want my phone call, Maya repeated, her voice a near whisper, but unwavering. Now. The 3 officers exchanged glances. Croft shrugged. Let her call her mommy. Maybe that'll make her more cooperative. Fine, Miller spat. He pulled Maya's phone from an evidence bag, holding it just out of her reach. One call. Make it quick. With her hands still cuffed behind her back, Maya had to twist awkwardly as Miller held the phone to her ear. Her thumb found the familiar pattern to unlock it, muscle memory overriding the pain and fear. She dialed a number she knew better than her own. It rang twice before a familiar voice came through, clear and strong. Maya, honey, where are you? You're past your curfew. Daddy, she choked out, tears finally breaking through her steely control. I'm at the police station. They hurt me, Dad. Really bad. There was a sharp, audible intake of breath on the other end of the line. What happened? Where are you? Are you injured? 3 officers. They stopped me walking home, Maya explained between sobs, trying to get the critical details out as quickly as she could. They beat me up on Oak and Madison. There were witnesses. So many witnesses, Dad. Everyone was recording. They're trying to say I attacked them, but I didn't. I didn't do anything wrong. Which station, Maya? The voice had gone from paternal concern to something cold and hard as granite, a tone she had rarely heard. Bridgeport. Daddy, please hurry, she whispered. I'm so scared. Listen to me carefully, sweetheart, her father said, and Maya could hear the sounds of furious movement in the background. Papers rustling, a door swinging open, muffled, urgent voices. I am handling this right now. You stay strong for me. Do not sign anything. Do not admit to anything. I am coming. Time's up, Miller snatched the phone away. Daddy's going to fix everything, Croft mocked, pitching his voice high and childish. Guess what, Princess? Daddy can't help you now. You're in our world. You should have just kept your mouth shut and shown a little respect, Harris added, cracking his knuckles menacingly. Maya sat up straighter, the pain in her body eclipsed by the memory of her father's voice. Stay strong. My father will be here soon, she said quietly. Oh, yeah? Miller leaned down again, his smile a cruel slash. And who is your daddy? The mayor? Superman? Maya met his gaze steadily and said nothing. She simply watched as he turned and walked to the door. Get comfortable, he called over his shoulder. You're going to be here for a while. Plenty of time to think about changing that story of yours. The door slammed shut, leaving Maya alone in the harsh fluorescent light. Her body throbbed, but her mind was strangely clear. Her father was coming. And unlike these 3 officers, She knew exactly who David Jackson was and what the Attorney General of the United States of America could do. In his study in Washington, D.C., David Jackson ended the call, his hand shaking with a fury so profound it felt like a physical illness. His wife, Maria, rushed in, her face pale. "What is it, David? What's wrong with Maya?" "She's been arrested. Beaten," he said, his voice a low growl. He was already dialing his chief of staff on another line. "I want the head of the Civil Rights Division on a secure line now," he barked. "I want a team of federal marshals ready to move on my authority. Get me Judge Amelia Thompson at the Fourth Circuit. We need emergency warrants for civil rights violations, excessive force, and conspiracy to falsify evidence." His office, a quiet space just moments before, erupted into a flurry of controlled chaos as agents and aides scrambled to carry out his orders. "Sir, we have social media reports flooding in from Bridgeport, North Carolina," an aide said, holding up a tablet. "There are multiple videos of an assault on a teenage girl by 3 police officers. The crowd outside the station is growing." David's jaw clenched as he watched one of the videos, his own daughter being thrown to the ground like a rag doll. "Get me everything there is on Sergeant Miller, Officer Croft, and Officer Harris of the Bridgeport PD. I want their full jackets, complaints, disciplinary actions." Everything. And outside the Bridgeport police station, the crowd had swelled to over 100 people. Reverend Thompson stood at the front, a silent, powerful presence, her silver hair gleaming under the streetlights. "Free Maya Jackson!" the crowd chanted. "Justice now!" Inside, Sergeant Miller paced nervously in the chief's office. "Something's not right. That girl, she's too damn calm." "Probably just some community college professor's kid," Chief Harding said dismissively, but his own voice wavered. "Thinks she's all high and mighty." The front doors of the station suddenly burst open. A team of FBI agents in tactical gear streamed in, led by Assistant Director Chen. "FBI, this is a federal intervention. Everyone stay where you are." The desk sergeant jumped to his feet, spilling coffee across his paper. "What in the hell?" "By order of the Attorney General of the United States," Chen announced, her voice cutting through the stunned silence. "This station and all its records are temporarily under federal jurisdiction. Sergeant Miller, Officer Croft, and Officer Harris are to surrender their badges and their weapons immediately." Miller's face went white. "On what grounds?" "Civil rights violations under color of law, conspiracy to obstruct justice, evidence tampering," Chen read from her tablet. "And that's just for starters." Federal agents moved methodically through the station, securing exits, seizing computer servers, and gathering evidence. In the processing room, an FBI agent gently helped Maya to her feet, unlocking the handcuffs. "You're safe now," the agent said softly, wrapping a warm blanket around Maya's shoulders. "We're getting you medical attention right away." Dawn was breaking as news vans began to arrive. Reporters thrust microphones toward the station entrance, their cameras rolling as the 3 officers were escorted out, their hands cuffed behind their backs. "This is Sarah Jenkins with Channel 7 News, live outside the Bridgeport police station, where a dramatic pre-dawn federal raid has just taken place." A black SUV with government plates pulled up, and David Jackson stepped out. The crowd parted as he rushed up the steps, his face tight with a father's fear and a prosecutor's resolve. "Daddy!" Maya's cry echoed across the lobby. She ran to him, ignoring her injuries, and he caught her in a fierce, protective embrace. "I'm here, baby girl," he whispered, holding her carefully. "I'm here now." This swift, overwhelming show of force feels like justice. But is it? David Jackson is using the immense power of his office to protect his own child. It's what any loving parent would wish for, but it's a power unavailable to almost everyone else. Does this moment represent a righteous correction? Or does it highlight an even greater unfairness in the system? The Jackson home, a modest colonial in a quiet D.C. suburb, was now a fortress. The medical team had insisted on taking Maya to Walter Reed for a full examination. The diagnosis: 3 bruised ribs, a mild concussion, and multiple deep contusions. By afternoon, they were finally home. The house buzzed with the quiet, efficient activity of a federal protection detail setting up security perimeters. Inside, Maya's mother, Maria, hadn't stopped crying since she'd seen her daughter's battered face. "We should have moved away from here years ago," Maria said, setting plates on the dinner table, her hands trembling. "This country—" "We are not running," David said firmly. "We are going to fix this. The right way." They sat down to a quiet dinner, the first real moment of peace since the nightmare had begun. "The officers have been suspended without pay," David assured Maya. "We have round-the-clock protection. Nobody is going to hurt you again." "I keep seeing their faces," Maya admitted quietly. When they... Maria reached across the table, squeezing her daughter's hand. "You are safe now, Mija." David's phone buzzed with an unlisted number. He stepped into the adjoining study to answer it. "Attorney General," a distorted voice hissed. "Quite a little show you put on today." Through the window, David noticed an unmarked sedan, a model favored by local law enforcement, rolling slowly past their house. Then another. "Who is this?" "Just a concerned citizen," the voice continued. "Things work differently down here in Bridgeport. Always have. You'd be smart to remember that." "Is that a threat?" David's voice was ice cold. "Let's just call it friendly advice. Drop this. Now, take your daughter on a long vacation, or we will bury you both so deep in the mud even the FBI won't be able to find you." The line went dead. David stood in the darkening study, watching more unmarked cars circle the block like sharks. He could hear Maya's laughter drifting in from the dining room, a sound both fragile and resilient. He gripped his phone tightly, his decision already made. They weren't going anywhere. Bridgeport had no idea what kind of fight they had just picked. Maya woke to the deafening chop, chop, chop of helicopters. The morning sun barely filtered through her bedroom window, blocked by something massive outside. She pushed aside the curtains and froze. Armored personnel carriers and men in the tactical gear of the State Bureau of Investigation, SBI, lined their street. A news helicopter circled low overhead, its spotlight sweeping across the quiet suburban houses in the pre-dawn gloom. "Dad!" she called out, her voice cracking with a new fear. "Mom!" David burst into her room, his face a grim mask as he took in the scene. "Maria, turn on the TV!" he shouted down the hall. The living room television flickered to life. Bridgeport Mayor Franklin Pierce's smooth, political face filled the screen. He was standing at a podium outside City Hall. "Due to ongoing civil unrest and threats against public safety by outside agitators," Pierce announced, "I am, with the full support of the governor, declaring a state of emergency in the city of Bridgeport. For the protection of all our citizens, the SBI will temporarily assume full control of all law enforcement duties. A mandatory curfew will be in effect from 7 p.m. to 6 a.m. Maria's hands flew to her mouth. "They can't do this." David's phone buzzed. It was his deputy. He answered, pacing the living room like a caged lion. "What do you mean they have jurisdiction? The governor overrode our authority?" He listened, his face growing darker. "Tell the team to stand down. I don't want a firefight." A sharp knock at the front door made them all jump. 2 SBI agents stood on the porch, their faces stern and unreadable behind mirrored sunglasses. "Mr. Attorney General," the first one said, with a hint of a smirk, "by order of the Governor of North Carolina, we are here to establish a protective detail for your family." "We do not require a protective detail," David replied, his voice dangerously low. "It's not optional, sir," the agent said, handing him a sheaf of official-looking papers. "And for your own safety, all your external communications will need to be monitored. Please limit all non-essential travel." Maya's phone chirped. The screen displayed "no service" before going dark. The home's Wi-Fi connection blinked out seconds later. "This is for your own good," the second agent said, his hand resting on his holstered weapon. "There are a lot of dangerous elements in this community." Maria turned up the TV volume as a breaking news banner flashed across the screen. The three officers who had beaten Maya, Miller, Croft, and Harris, stood outside the police union building, newly released. Sergeant Miller stepped up to the microphones. "What happened that night was a tragic misunderstanding," Miller said, his voice thick with a fake, pious sorrow. "But the public doesn't have the full story. We were the ones who were attacked while performing our sworn duties." The screen split to show grainy footage. Maya watched in absolute horror as a doctored, edited version of her assault played. The angles were carefully chosen, the frames manipulated to show her throwing the first punch, to make her look like the aggressor. "That's a lie!" she screamed at the television. "That's not what happened!" Her trembling fingers opened her secure cloud storage account on her laptop. The real video, the complete, unedited file, should have been there, automatically uploaded during the attack. But when she clicked on the file, her heart stopped. The video that played was the same doctored footage being broadcast on the news. "No, no," she whispered, frantically scrolling through her files. Everything from that night was gone, replaced with this fabricated version. "Dad, they hacked my account. They changed the video." This is the system protecting itself. Lies become headlines, truth is buried, and allies are silenced. It's a terrifying display of how power can manipulate reality itself. Have you ever seen a situation where the official story was so completely at odds with the truth you knew? How do you fight back when the narrative itself is the weapon? David was already back on a landline, his voice rising in fury. "Listen to me, Amelia," he was saying to the federal judge. "This is a coordinated cover-up. What do you mean, political considerations? My daughter was assaulted by men with badges." A text message suddenly popped up on his personal cell phone from an unknown number. "Back off, Jackson. Some battles aren't worth fighting for anyone." Outside, more SBI vehicles arrived. Agents set up checkpoints at every intersection, checking the IDs of anyone trying to enter their neighborhood. Reverend Thompson tried to bring them a casserole, but was rudely turned away at the barricade. "This is still America," the elderly woman shouted as they forced her to leave. "You can't cage people in their own homes." Maya's social media accounts filled with conflicting messages. Some friends posted support. Many others, however, shared the doctored video with angry comments about anti-police thugs and troublemakers from Washington. News channels began to debate the new footage, questioning her character, digging into her family's past. Maya heard sobbing from her parents' bedroom and found her mother curled on the bed, her shoulders shaking. "I can't watch them do this to you," Maria whispered. "First they beat you, and now they are assassinating your character with these lies." An alert popped up on David's laptop from one of his few remaining loyalists inside the DOJ. "Sir, something is very wrong here. All the evidence from the Bridgeport raid is disappearing from our servers. Files are being corrupted, witness statements retracted. Someone with very high-level clearance is blocking us from the inside." Through the window, Maya watched another SBI cruiser roll slowly past, moving with deliberate menace. The agent in the passenger seat stared directly at her, his face a blank slate behind dark sunglasses. She clutched her useless, disconnected phone, its blank screen reflecting her own bruised face. The true battle wasn't just about what happened on a street corner anymore. This was a battle for the truth itself. And right now, the truth was being erased, rewritten, and twisted into a weapon aimed directly at her heart. A camera flash from across the street caught her eye. Someone was photographing their house from a neighbor's window. The SBI agents stationed outside did nothing to stop them. They weren't there to protect the Jacksons. They were there to watch them, to contain them, and to make sure they couldn't fight back. Dawn's light revealed the full extent of the vandalism at the First Baptist Church. Maya stood on the sidewalk, staring at the spray-painted walls, her hands clenched into fists. "Liars!" screamed at her in crude red letters, dripping like blood down the white siding. The beautiful stained glass windows depicting the River Jordan were shattered, crunching under her feet like broken promises. Reverend Thompson emerged from the church doors, her shoulders as straight as a ship's mast, despite the visible exhaustion in her eyes. She carried a broom and a dustpan. "They think this will silence us," she said, her voice a low rumble. "But every window they break just lets God's light shine through in a new way." Maya took a deep breath and began to help the older woman sweep the sparkling shards of glass into neat piles. "I can't believe they are getting away with this," she whispered. "For now," the Reverend corrected her gently. She paused her sweeping and looked down the street. "We have company." A tall white man in jeans and a t-shirt was approaching cautiously, his hands visible at his sides. Maya recognized him as one of the younger deputies from the station. "Deputy Carter," Reverend Thompson said, her tone cool and watchful. "Just Ben now," he replied, his voice tight with anger. "Chief Harding suspended me this morning. Said I was undermining department morale by asking too many questions about what really happened to you." The Reverend studied him for a long, silent moment. "Come help us sweep, Ben. We can talk while we work." As they cleaned, Ben shared what little he knew. "Harding has been covering up incidents like this for years, but he's smart about it. He keeps the real evidence off the official police servers. I tried accessing the body cam footage from that night. It's already been scrubbed." "That's because it's not on the department's servers," a familiar voice said from behind them. They all turned to see Chloe standing there, wringing her hands nervously. "What do you mean?" Ben Carter asked. Chloe glanced around before continuing, her voice a near whisper. "Last summer I was volunteering at the station for my civics class. I overheard Chief Harding talking on the phone about his insurance policy. He has a private off-the-books server at his house. That's where he keeps all the sensitive stuff, the real body cam footage, the files on local politicians, everything." The Reverend's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. "The mansion up on Hill Street? The one with all those security cameras and the private guards?" Ben Carter nodded grimly. "He's got a state-of-the-art system. It would be impossible to get in there." Chloe took a shaky breath. "But I know the rotation schedule for the guards," she said. "And I know there's a blind spot in the camera coverage near the woods at the back of the property." Chloe's betrayal was born from fear for her family, a primal and understandable instinct. Her return is an act of profound courage. It poses a difficult question. Can an act born of desperation be forgiven if it's followed by an act of redemption? Where is the line between self-preservation and moral duty? They gathered in the church's small office, away from any prying eyes. Using paper and pencils to avoid electronic surveillance, they sketched out the layout of Harding's mansion based on Ben's knowledge. Chloe's significant computer skills could help them access the server if they could just get inside the house. "This is incredibly dangerous," Reverend Thompson warned, her face etched with concern. "If you're caught, we're already in danger," Maya replied, her voice steely. "At least this way, we're fighting back." As dusk approached, Maya slipped back to her house. She found her father in his study, surrounded by stacks of files and a list of dead-end phone numbers. "Daddy," she said softly, "I need your help with something, but you can't ask me any questions." David Jackson looked at his daughter, at the fire in her eyes, a reflection of his own. He opened his desk drawer and pulled out a recording device no bigger than a shirt button. "Wear this," he said, showing her how to activate it. "Whatever you're planning, and you're right, I don't want to know. At least there will be evidence if anything goes wrong." The device was military-grade, untraceable. "I have friends too," he said, answering her unasked question. "Old friends from the Bureau, who know how to move things quietly." He hugged her tight. "Be smart, Maya. Be safe." And as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in deep indigos and purples, the small team met at their designated point. They huddled in the warm evening air, lost in their own thoughts and fears, waiting for the full darkness to provide them their cover. "Remember," Reverend Thompson whispered, pressing a small, smooth cross into Maya's hand. "You are not alone. Our entire community is with you in spirit, even if they cannot be here in body." Darkness settled over the woods behind Chief Harding's mansion, like a heavy wool blanket. Maya's heart hammered against her ribs as she crawled through the thick, damp underbrush, following Ben Carter's silent hand signals. "Wait for my signal," Ben whispered, checking his watch. "Guard change in 3 minutes." Maya touched the tiny recording device hidden in her jacket's seam. The small, smooth cross Reverend Thompson had given her felt warm against her skin. Ben raised a hand. They watched as 2 private security guards walked past, their footsteps crunching on the gravel path. The moment the guards rounded the corner of the house, Ben waved them forward. They sprinted across the open ground, diving behind a row of neatly trimmed azalea bushes. They reached the basement window Ben had identified. With a small, specialized tool, he worked at the lock. With an agonizingly slow creak, the window swung open. Reverend Thompson, who had insisted on being their lookout, gave Maya's hand a final squeeze. "Be careful, child." One by one, they slipped through the narrow window into a musty, cluttered storage room. Ben led them down a narrow hallway. "The server room should be right through here," he murmured, stopping at a heavy steel door with an electronic keypad. "Chloe?" Chloe pulled out her laptop and a small, homemade device of wires and circuit boards. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, executing a program that exploited a known flaw in that model of security panel. With a soft click, the lock disengaged. Inside, rows of humming computer servers cast a pale blue light. The air was thick with the artificial chill of the cooling systems. "Start with the most recent files," Ben suggested, standing guard by the door. "The footage would have been uploaded the night of the assault." Maya and Chloe began their search. The digital filing system was meticulous, a detailed record of the chief's corruption. But as they worked, Maya noticed Chloe's movements seemed increasingly jerky and uncertain. I'm going to check the hallway," Chloe whispered suddenly, her voice strained, "just to make sure we're still clear." Before Maya could respond, Chloe slipped out of the room. Ben frowned, a flicker of suspicion in his eyes, but stayed focused on the task at hand. Suddenly, a distant door slammed. Alarm bells shattered the silence, their electronic shriek deafening in the confined space. Red emergency lights began flashing, turning the server room into a crimson nightmare. "Run!" Ben shouted, drawing his concealed weapon. "It's a trap!" Heavy footsteps thundered down the stairs. Chief Harding burst through the door, flanked by 2 officers with their guns drawn. Miller and Croft. A cruel, triumphant smile twisted Harding's face. "Well, well, breaking and entering, Deputy Carter? That's a serious offense." "This ends tonight, Harding," Ben growled, positioning himself between Maya and the chief. "No," Harding replied calmly. "It ends exactly the way I planned." A single shot cracked through the air. Ben cried out, a strangled gasp, and crumpled to the floor as a dark stain of blood spread rapidly across his thigh. Maya screamed, backing away as the officers advanced. "The bathroom!" Ben gasped through a grimace of pain. "Go! Now!" Maya bolted for the small half-bath they had passed in the hallway. Bullets pinged off the metal server cabinets behind her. She slammed the door shut and scrambled onto the toilet to reach the narrow, high window above it. The glass shattered as she kicked through it, sharp edges tearing at her clothes. She tumbled out into the damp night air, landing hard on the manicured lawn. Shouts and the beams of flashlights cut through the darkness. The baying of dogs echoed from the front of the property. Maya ran, branches whipping her face as she plunged into the deep woods behind the mansion. Her lungs burned, but she didn't dare slow down. The sounds of pursuit grew closer. Searchlights from the house swept through the trees, casting long, grotesque shadows that seemed to reach for her. She stumbled over roots and fallen branches, her ankle twisting painfully, a sob of terror and despair escaping her lips. A massive fallen oak tree loomed ahead. Maya dove beneath its ancient trunk, pressing herself into the damp, earthy hollow between wood and ground. Dead leaves and spiderwebs clung to her hair and skin, but she didn't move. Boots crashed through the underbrush just yards away. The powerful beams of flashlights probed the darkness around her hiding place. Maya held her breath, tears streaming silently down her face as she thought of Ben, bleeding on the floor, of Chloe's devastating betrayal, of how horribly everything had gone wrong. With trembling, mud-caked fingers, she pulled out her phone. The screen's glow felt dangerously bright, but she had to let her father know. She typed a single word and hit send. Betrayed. Then she curled herself into the smallest possible ball, making her body one with the shadows and the earth, and waited as the searchlights continued their relentless, probing sweep through the dark and hostile woods. The safe-house kitchen glowed with the soft light of a new day. Tiana sat at the table, a cup of herbal tea untouched in her hands. Samuel studied a map of the city, now covered in red X's marking a tightening perimeter of police checkpoints. Reverend Thompson burst through the back door, her eyes bright with a fierce, unyielding purpose. "Child, I think I have found something." She pulled a chair close to Tiana. "You remember Marcus Johnson? The tech genius from my activist days back in the 80s. Samuel looked up. "The ghost? The man who helped expose that ring of corrupt judges?" "The very same," the Reverend smiled. "He is long retired, but he has never lost his touch. I managed to get through to him last night on a secure satellite line. He says there is a chance, a small one, that he can recover your original footage from the cloud." Hope, a fragile, fluttering thing, sparked in Tiana's chest. "But they hacked my account. They deleted it and replaced it." "Honey," the Reverend patted her hand, "nothing on the internet is ever truly gone. Marcus says there are always traces, deep archival data, what he calls digital ghosts, especially with automatic cloud backups. He just needs a few hours, and a clean, secure connection. They spent the morning transforming the safe house basement into a makeshift command center. Suddenly, a soft, hesitant knock came at the basement door. Ben Carter, leaning heavily on makeshift crutches, eased the door open. Chloe stood on the threshold, pale and trembling, her eyes red and swollen from crying. "Please," she whispered. "I have to talk to Maya." Maya's heart clenched. The memory of the trap, of Ben being shot, was still a raw, open wound. "You have some nerve showing your face here," David growled, stepping forward. But Reverend Thompson held up a hand. "Let the child speak." Chloe stepped into the basement. "They threatened my little brother," she said, her voice breaking. "They showed me pictures, evidence they'd faked, that they would plant drugs in his locker. They said they would get him expelled, ruin his entire future. I was so scared." She looked pleadingly at Maya. "But what I did, what they made me do, I can't live with it. Ben was shot because of me. I want to help make it right." "How?" Maya's voice was hard, brittle. "How can you possibly make any of this right?" "Because I know things," Chloe said, wiping furiously at her tears. "About Chief Harding's network, about where he keeps the real backups." She pulled a small, encrypted flash drive from her pocket. "I copied some critical system files before we went into the mansion that night. I was supposed to give it to them, to prove my loyalty. But I couldn't. I just couldn't do it." David took the drive, examining it. "This could be another trap." "It's not," Chloe insisted. "Test it. Check it. I know how to navigate his system from the outside now. These are the decryption keys. Please, just let me help fix what I broke." Reverend Thompson studied the girl's tear-streaked face. "Fear makes good people do terrible things," she said finally. "But courage is facing those mistakes and trying to make amends." She turned to Maya. "What do you say, child?" Maya looked at her former best friend, the girl who had shared all her secrets, her dreams, and her fears, the girl who had betrayed her so deeply, but also the girl who had come back, risking everything to try to undo the damage. "Okay," Maya said quietly. "You can help, but no more secrets, no more lies." They spent the rest of the day setting up their own secure, off-grid communications network, using Chloe's knowledge of the police department's systems to find dead zones and blind spots in their surveillance. As evening approached, the Reverend's special satellite phone buzzed. It was Marcus "Ghost" Johnson. Everyone gathered around as she put it on speaker. "Got it," his gravelly voice announced. "The original footage, unedited, crystal clear, with embedded metadata. Those amateurs scrubbed the primary file, but they didn't know about the geo-redundant tertiary backups. I have the entire thing, from the first racial slur to the last brutal kick." Maya sagged with relief. David's eyes gleamed with a prosecutor's renewed purpose. "Now what?" Chloe asked. The Reverend smiled grimly. "Now we plan our resurrection. The mayor is holding that big televised town hall tomorrow, isn't he? All about healing our community and other such nonsense." She squeezed Maya's shoulder. "Seems like the perfect time to show the entire world what really happened in Bridgeport." The town hall auditorium buzzed with a tense, managed energy. "Today," Mayor Pierce boomed from the podium, "we come together as one community to heal our divisions." Maya and Chloe pressed themselves against the back wall, inching toward the AV control booth. "And now," the mayor said, "I'd like to introduce a man who has worked tirelessly to maintain peace and order through these trying times. Our distinguished Chief of Police, Dale Harding." Polite applause scattered through the room. "Just a few more steps," Chloe breathed. The AV booth door was propped slightly ajar. Inside, 2 technicians were focused on their monitors. "Excuse me, you can't be—" one of the techs started, turning around. Chloe flashed Ben Carter's borrowed badge. "Police business. We need to check the feed. Step aside." It was a bluff, but a good one. Maya's hands flew over the equipment, her fingers a blur, connecting the flash drive with Chloe's decryption keys to a port on the master console, just as they'd practiced. "Almost there," she whispered. On stage, Chief Harding was building to his big finale. "And I want to address the unfortunate incident that has so needlessly divided our town." Maya hit enter. The giant screens behind the chief flickered. His voice cut out. And then, there it was. Crystal clear footage of that night on Madison Avenue. Sergeant Miller. Sneering. The first brutal swing of his baton. Gasps rippled through the stunned crowd. Someone screamed. On screen, Officer Croft's face was a mask of rage as he kicked Maya's ribs. The sickening thud of the impact echoed through the high-end speakers. The footage kept playing. Every blow, every shouted threat, every second of undeniable truth. "Shut it off!" Harding roared from the stage, but his microphone was dead. "That's enough!" Chief Harding's top captain, a bull-necked man named Rollins, bellowed from the side of the stage. He pointed a thick finger at Maya. "Arrest her. Now!" Officers surged toward the booth, but Reverend Thompson was faster. In a movement of astonishing speed, she swung her heavy oak walking cane like a baseball bat, catching the first officer squarely in the knees. He went down with a howl. "Not on my watch!" she shouted. The room erupted. The church elders grabbed folding chairs, forming a human barrier between the police and the AV booth. Ben Carter appeared from nowhere, tackling an officer despite his injured leg. The people rose as one, their cell phones held high, recording everything. Chief Harding himself vaulted off the stage, surprisingly agile for a man his age. He charged through the chaos, his face purple with fury. His hand closed around Maya's arm like a steel vice. "You little—" Maya drove her knee upward into his groin, just like her father had taught her in their self-defense classes. Harding doubled over, gasping, but didn't let go. They struggled, crashing into the soundboard. "Let her go!" Chloe screamed. She pulled out the can of pepper spray she'd been carrying and sprayed it directly into the chief's face. Harding released Maya, howling and clawing at his burning eyes. All around them, the battle raged. Reverend Thompson's cane cracked against riot shields. Elder Jenkins threw a chair at Captain Rollins. Church ladies with heavy purses swung at any uniformed officer who came near. Years of fear and rage exploded into open, cathartic defiance. "The video!" Maya shouted over the chaos. "Keep it playing!" The footage continued to loop, stark and damning, as Bridgeport tore itself apart in the morning light. The town's uprising was a powder keg lit by a single spark of truth. It was messy, chaotic, and arguably violent. But was it necessary? When a system is so corrupt that all legal avenues are blocked, does a community have a right, or even a responsibility, to rise up and shatter the peace to achieve justice? The glass doors of the Bridgeport Civic Center burst open as the fighting spilled out onto the plaza and into the morning sun. News helicopters, which had been circling, dipped lower, their cameras capturing every moment of the city's rebellion. Tiana stumbled down the concrete steps, still clutching a microphone stand as a makeshift weapon. Behind her, Reverend Thompson's voice rang out, clear and powerful. "Forward, children! Don't let them escape justice!" The crowd surged onto the plaza. Captain Rollins barked frantic orders to his SBI troopers, who tried to form a defensive line with their riot shields. But for every officer who stepped forward, 3 citizens, black, white, and brown, stepped up to meet them. Chief Harding, his eyes red and streaming from the pepper spray, tried to slip away through the chaos. But Ben Carter, leaning heavily on a barricade, blocked his path. "Going somewhere, Chief?" The church ladies quickly formed a tight circle around the disgraced chief, their purses and umbrellas at the ready. Chloe appeared at Maya's side, holding up a laptop. "Look, we're still streaming live. Everywhere. They can't hide from this." The piercing wail of approaching sirens cut through the noise. But these were not local sirens. A convoy of black SUVs with federal plates roared up to the plaza, their lights flashing. David Jackson stepped out of the lead vehicle, flanked by stern-faced agents in FBI jackets. Behind them came more vehicles, carrying officials from the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division. "Federal agents!" David's voice boomed through a megaphone. "Everyone stand where you are," Captain Rollins sneered. "This is a state matter, Jackson. You have no authority here." "This is now a federal investigation into systemic civil rights violations, public corruption, and domestic terrorism," David shot back, his voice like thunder. He held up a thick stack of papers. "And I have federal warrants for Vernon Harding, Franklin Pierce, and Michael Rollins, along with 30 of their ranking officers." The crowd parted like the Red Sea as the federal agents moved in, their movements swift and professional. Mayor Pierce began to protest, straightening his tie with shaking hands. "Now see here, this is completely—" Click. The handcuffs locked around his wrists. "Mayor Franklin Pierce," an agent recited from memory, "you are under arrest for conspiracy against the rights of citizens, obstruction of a federal investigation, and misuse of public funds." More agents surrounded Chief Harding. He didn't resist as they cuffed him, his face a mask of utter defeat. Captain Rollins, however, was not going down without a fight. He shoved an agent and reached for his sidearm. In a blur of motion, 3 FBI agents tackled him to the ground. "Get off me," he snarled. "I was maintaining order." "You were terrorizing innocent American citizens," David said, his voice cold, as they hauled the struggling captain to his feet. "And now, you will answer for it." The plaza erupted in a roar of cheers as the corrupt leaders of Bridgeport were led away, one by one. Reverend Thompson raised her cane in triumph, leading the crowd in a powerful, spontaneous rendition of Amazing Grace. Even some of the younger local officers, who had stood by silently out of fear for their jobs, could be seen quietly singing along. Luke, the good cop, hobbled over to Maya, grinning through his pain. "We did it," he breathed. "We actually did it." Chloe hugged them both, sobbing with relief. "I'm so sorry I betrayed you. I was just so scared." "You came back," Maya said, squeezing her hand. "That's what matters." The morning sun climbed higher in the sky. FBI evidence teams swarmed the police station and the chief's mansion. Civil rights investigators began taking statements from dozens of witnesses. Tiana swayed on her feet, the adrenaline that had fueled her for so long finally ebbing away. Strong arms caught her as she stumbled. She looked up into her father's face, seeing the same exhaustion there, the same profound relief. "Daddy," she whispered. "I've got you, baby girl," David Jackson said, holding her close. "I've got you." Around them, the plaza was a tapestry of tears and laughter, of embraces and celebration. Mrs. Thompson's voice rose above it all. "This," she declared, her voice ringing with the authority of a prophet, "is what justice looks like. This is what happens when we stand together." Tiana pressed her face into her father's chest, breathing in his familiar scent. Her body ached, her bruises throbbed, but her heart felt light for the first time in weeks. They had won. They had truly won, and through her own tears of relief, she watched her broken community begin to heal itself in the warm morning light. The truth had, at long last, set them free.